probably the biggest supply and demand imbalance that we've ever seen in Canada. I think the cycle we're coming into for the next 3 years is probably going to be one of the best opportunities. You're finally starting to see the rent appreciation that we've been waiting for a very long time. Today is going to be the last episode of 2023. I wanted to do a year in review, talk about the market, and also look forward into the next couple of years. Anybody that knows me knows I'm always super bullish and excited about the future. I'm a pretty positive person, but I would say ever since I've started investing in real estate, right now, I think the cycle we're coming into for the next 3 years is probably going to be one of the best opportunities that we'll see in a long time. It's a cycle that I don't think we've seen for 20 years or so, and it's largely driven by demand. So looking back at the year, it was a pretty odd year where if you ask the average person how much interest rates have went up in 2023, they're probably going to say a couple percent, or maybe they doubled. And in reality, they moved 0.5%. So starting in January, the rate was 4.5 and it's 5 today. But it felt like a lot because we were just getting the tail end of 2022 when interest rates did go up so much. In a normal time when that would happen, the prices, either cap rates would go up to kind of compensate for that and cause prices to come down. And this was one of those times when we didn't see that happen. Maybe now a little bit we are, but essentially cap rates remain the same and interest rates went way up. So, we used to buy at under 2% interest rate and the cap rate was 5. There was a big spread there. You could make a lot of deals work. And now we're essentially buying at just under a 5% interest rate, and cap rates really didn't move. So you're buying at a 5% cap rate. It's a lot harder to make things pencil out. We didn't buy anything throughout the year. We looked at a few deals. We've seen a lot less deals than we have in other years. We put some offers in. Some were pretty close, but it was always almost like a stretch to make it work. Well, if we did this, you could pencil it out, make the deal work, and we didn't want to do that. And I felt like there was a lot less room to work with sellers this year than maybe in previous years. They didn't want to come down on the price at all. They were used to having it, a certain price that they had in their head. And that's fair. I think anyone who's been around long enough knows you're finally starting to see the rent appreciation that we've been waiting for a very long time. And if interest rates are at the peak or close to the peak, you're going to start seeing this gap where rents are going up, interest rates are coming down, that any property that's being held, as long as the demand stays up, is going to be worth a lot more in a few years than it is today. So there's no use in discounting it and selling it unless you have to. And I think one of the reasons that we didn't see a lot of property start coming to market when debt came due, if something was financed at 2% and the debt's coming up at 5% or 6%, you should have seen a lot more properties come to market. One reason I think we didn't see that happen was when CMHC came in with a new 50-year AM, 5% down loan, that really saved a lot of people. If you can add an extra 10 years of amortization to a property, you can get that extra cash flow. And even if the interest rates are higher, you can usually make it work. And then going to 95% instead of 85% gives you a lot of room to work there too. Even if your building's worth slightly less, you can make that work without having to put a bunch of equity in. So I think that, probably by design, they came out with that program right before interest rates went up and did help to keep the prices up. But even on the single family side, I don't think we've seen a huge surge of product to the market and prices come way down. And that's just due to demand. And that's a big reason why I'm so bullish, looking at the next couple of years, is I think we're coming into probably the biggest supply and demand imbalance that we've ever seen in Canada. And I don't see the solution to really get out of it. For years, Alberta used to move in. It was about 2.4 people for every unit we built. And in 2022, that number went up to over 6. So 6 people were coming in for every 1 unit coming online. We'll see what the numbers come out in 2023, but I would assume that number is probably even higher. We didn't really increase our supply much, and I mean, we were breaking migration records here pretty much every quarter, so a lot more people came in. You can see it in the vacancy rate. When I moved here, vacancy was about 7%, and then it went to 4. They're saying it's probably around 3 today in Alberta, and in the next 16 months or so it should be under 2. And under 2% isn't really even a healthy market. That's really 3% I think is where it should be, and I don't see us getting back there anytime soon. There's just too many people coming, and we're not able to increase supply, and that's a problem across Canada. We built more homes in 1973 than we ever have since. And in 1973, Canada had a population of 23 million, and it wasn't growing very quick. Now, we have 40 million people. We're building less homes, and we're growing at a lot quicker rate. We're just bringing in so many people, right? They're increasing immigration numbers pretty much every year. They just announced they're increasing our international students. So this year we brought in 950,000, and they're going to increase that to right around 1.5 million. So that's 500,000 extra renters. Students generally rent coming into the country every year. Within the next 3 years, where's everyone going to stay? We used to, in the year 2000, I think the number of students we brought in was around 100,000. So, it'll have went up 15 times, and we're increasing temporary workers and all these things, which we need the workers, but we are also running into a problem where, Canada's GDP actually went down last quarter at a time when our population's growing, right? So if you imagine the GDP per person, it went down a lot more than just the overall number that shrunk. Alberta's economy actually is growing. As Canada shrinks, I think it massively benefits Alberta. We're already very affordable, and that's why a lot of people are moving here. Now, if our economy is growing and jobs are growing, business investments up almost 15% this year in Alberta. In Fort Saskatchewan, they're building that $10 billion plant. Big projects are happening. And if the rest of Canada's economy is shrinking, I think you'll see even more people start to move here. And again, we don't really have a way to bring supply online. So I think you'll see rents continue to go up a lot. In Edmonton, I've always kind of been told we lag Calgary. We have a lot more supply here. We have more units. So we generally lag them by 6 months to a year. Now, I don't think we see maybe the same rents that Calgary has here in the next year, but it definitely will be increasing quite a bit, I would think. You see the government try to come in with programs to help with subsidizing housing. I don't think any of those have really been very effective. And I think going into the next couple of years, we're going to see, projects that were already online in 2021 or 2022, they continued to build them. You're halfway done, you have to finish them. I think now we'll start to see that slowdown of people aren't taking the risk of building when interest rates are this high. And until rates start to come down, we're going to see an even bigger supply shortage because less and less people will develop until those rates come down. I do think too, a lot of people are waiting, they're kind of using this to saying, well, interest rates are high, we'll buy a house or we'll get into real estate when interest rates come down. And I don't see that being the case. I mean, if interest rates went to 2% tomorrow, the price of housing would go through the roof because the demand is still there. So even in multifamily, sure, you're buying the asset and it should be in a good location, but essentially you're buying income. And you can't, if it has a NOI of 100,000 and you can finance it at 5%, you can finance a lot more at 2%, right? And the sellers know that, so they're doing the same thing the buyers are doing. If I go to my broker and ask them to underwrite something and see how much we can finance for it. The seller's already done that and came up with the purchase price. So they know what people can pay. So I think you're going to see, if interest rates come down, prices are just going to go up and things aren't going to get, I can't see housing becoming very affordable for a very long time until we get supply online. And that kind of ties into one of the cycles I would follow. So it's a 18.6 year real estate cycle, and that's give or take a few years. That's obviously an average. But generally there's, from the last recession, there's 14 years up, a flattening out period, and then there's a couple of years of just hyper growth. And you can go back and look, at that cycle, and it kind of repeats itself over and over. And I think we're just going to be at the beginning of that, the last hyper inflation or appreciation cycle. And you can kind of see, even the politically in the country, I think a lot of that will happen where, if we get a new federal government and they come in with all the, like if Pierre got in, some of the policies he's talking about where you're making cities increase the amount of units they bring in by 10% a year, or they don't get federal funding. And I assume if the housing crisis is still really bad, they'll slow back immigration. And you can see where if interest rates go down, everybody's going to start to build, because rents, you can't bring supply on quickly. It takes a year or 2 years to build something. Everyone's going to be building because interest rates finally came down. And then if we start to limit the demand, if we start to slow immigration and we're forcing supply, that's where I think that will be the end of the cycle. So maybe that comes in the year 26, 27. And again, it could be off by a couple of years, but that's what I would guess would happen, is we're going to see a lot of growth in the next couple of years. I'm really excited about it. I don't think it's great for the country. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to struggle to find housing. But in a city like Edmonton, we're still so affordable. Rents could double, and we wouldn't be at the level of Vancouver or Toronto as far as the average overall rent. So you hear talk even now about that they should bring in rent control here in Alberta, and it's kind of laughable, because if people in Vancouver can afford to pay 70 or 80% of their income in rent, and they make it work. I don't think it's comfortable, I don't think it's good, but they can do it. Why can we in Alberta not go from 30 to 40% of our income, right? So we can, I guess, is the answer. And I don't think rent control will come in for a while, but there definitely talks. You see the government trying to pretty much pull any string they can. So the federal government's talking about maybe federally putting in some kind of ban on Airbnbs. They've kind of changed the tax laws to make it a lot less, to make it less appealing to people to do it. And that would bring on a few units, but that's really a Band-Aid. I mean, it's not a long-term solution. It'll bring in some units quickly, and that's a one-time thing, and that's it. Then maybe it brings on 50,000 units into the country if everyone had to close their Airbnb. But a lot of those, like I know people who have Airbnbs in, tourist places, and they use them for whenever they're there, and then they Airbnb them out for the rest of the year. It's not like those people are going to sell those to a homeowner. They're still going to keep them. They'll just make less money, and people won't be able to rent them. So I don't love the idea. I've never personally liked the Airbnb model myself, but I don't think it should go away. That's just one of the things. I think it's the easiest thing the government can do. So again, I don't have the exact start date of this cycle, but a lot of stuff I'm reading now says they are expecting rate cuts to start in, as early as April. And if that starts happening, I think the price increases will start to come. Properties will start to go up in value. And they almost have to cut rates. I mean, we have in Canada millions of mortgages that are coming up in the next 16 months. That's a lot of people that had houses at 2 or 3% interest that now are going to have to put it in at 6%. That's just too big of a burden on the economy. If people are paying an extra couple $100 or $500 or $1,000, depending on your mortgage, to going to just service debt, and that's not getting spent at restaurants or on vehicles, or I think a lot of people for a long time, when their mortgage come up, you would get a home equity line of credit, or you'd pull some money out, buy something, a bigger item that you've been waiting for, and that's all going to stop because that money won't be there. So there's a lot of variable rate mortgages are actually negatively amortizing right now, where people have the banks will stretch that out to 90 years because you're not even covering your payment doesn't change, and you're not even covering the interest anymore. So they're just adding the extra to the price of your home, or to the price of the mortgage. So I think you're going to see it's going to have to lower interest rates just to accommodate that. Or maybe you'll see them start stretching out on residential. Maybe we see 50-year AMs on residential stuff in the next couple of years. But again, that doesn't make anything more affordable. It allows people to pay more for a home and keeps the home prices up. So it definitely doesn't help with inflation, and it doesn't help with home prices. It's purely a supply and demand cycle that I believe we're in, and I don't think any of these little things that they're planning to do will really help with that. So for me, I want to own, we're looking at some deals now. It feels like the market's kind of coming around where people are understanding, where prices are, and you can make sense of stuff. We want to buy as much as we can, kind of buying into the cycle. I don't want to, nobody knows when the top is, and no one wants to buy there, but I would want to try to buy into that cycle, right? Get as much real estate as you can and let it appreciate through the last couple years of the cycle. And it was kind of funny. I looked back in Edmonton. I think they started tracking this in 1962, the average price of a home. And it went, in 1962, the average price was around $12,000 for a house. And, so think of that appreciation over time. And it really doesn't matter if over that amount of time, if the price went down for a few years, over a long enough period, it's going to go up. And it's kind of crazy to see from 12,000 to where we are today. I mean, you probably couldn't get 2 windows for a house for that price right now. So things have definitely inflated a lot. And that's a big reason, why housing goes up, is just we're devaluing the dollar very quickly. We printed so much money. So I think that's a reason why interest rates come down as well. The government has so much debt that, very soon every single dollar from GST is going to just service our debt. And that's not very sustainable long term when our economy is shrinking. That just doesn't work. So they're going to have to lower interest rates, in my opinion, and I don't know when that'll be. They can't do it too quickly, or inflation will come back. But anyways, I'm very bullish, obviously, for the future. I think I really like multifamily. Single family never really has done it for me. It's too dependent on, it fluctuates a lot more with multifamily. You are buying income, and so as long as the rents stay fairly consistent, your property value is not going down. I mean, cap rates change a little bit, but very little, and it's unlikely that if interest rates go down, cap rates are going to go up. If anything, they'll probably compress a little bit, and that's obviously a big help to anyone who's owning the property. So I'm really looking forward to the next few years. I guess we'll see. I have had a few people ask me lately if I would do one-on-one coaching or mentorship, or put together some kind of a little group. And it is in my mind. I think there's not enough people that are actually operators and operating property and buying property that do the courses. I think a lot of courses today are kind of put on by people who are making money running the course. So I always have wanted to do that. It's something where you could help people out, and that is kind of in my mind. So maybe in 2024, that'll be something we'll explore a bit more. If anyone is interested, just send me a message, and I can put you on the list. If we ever do put something together, you'll be the first ones to know. And yeah, anyways, everyone have a good holidays. I know my kids are super excited for Christmas. It's always a fun time of year. So we'll see you guys in 2024.